Hi, Leo. Welcome to your April 2018 Astro Update. It's Rena here. So, Leo, there's a lot of activity brewing in the ninth house, which is the house of the higher mind. And I think, especially perhaps for some of you, even foreign travel. And the higher mind can be either philosophical musings, it can be a religious path that you're going down, a spiritual path, or it can be university level instruction or teaching. And also the ninth house is publishing, and it's for long distance traveling, it's all about expansion because this is a house that is connected to Sagittarius and its ruler Jupiter, and it's every way that we kind of find expansion in our life. And those are like some of the avenues: intellectual, spiritual, physical. So as the month begins, we have a Mercury Retrograde in Aries, and and actually the sun is also there at the same time. So the sun is in that ninth house. You have the Mercury retrograde in that house, and something is going on with one of those topics. Something is delayed or jumbled. There's kind of some snafu that's occurring. Maybe you had airline tickets, and you were supposed to be leaving on a certain date, and you have to get it sorted out. Maybe your passport didn't get renewed or something, or you can't prove something to get the passport. Something's going on. And so you may be delayed for this trip that you're supposed to take. Well, understand this. If something is delaying you, don't look at it as something bad. Assume that there might be a higher reason for it, and just think that it's actually a blessing, because you never know. It could actually be exactly that. Maybe this is something to do with your application to graduate school or something along those lines, where you can't seem to get them to accept it. There's always something that you forgot to add, or you didn't clarify. So remember that this too shall pass. The interesting thing about this Mercury retrograde is that Mercury goes direct on April 15th, which is the same day. Well, in America, that's tax day. We know it as time to turn in our tax forms. But it's also the same day that the new moon is in Aries. So that's a good point to make, too, about the taxes. If you're filling out your taxes, and you send it in before April 15th, if it's in that window between the 22nd of March and April 15th, you better check that form, because you never know. Of course, we do things online now, a lot of people, so they would tell you if something was off. But anyway, the new moon is on the same day when Mercury goes direct. So there might be some kind of a connection between this disconnect in communication and what the new moon represents. It's like you had to go through that in order to turn over a new leaf when it comes to whatever it is that you're doing. Like an example would be, let's say you turned in some application that got rejected, or something was, you made a mistake on your college application, and you decide you're not going to college, and you take a totally different turn. And maybe you decide, I'm going to go to Europe or something for a year. I'm going to take that money that my parents gave me, and I'm going to just blow it in Europe. And you're like making a different choice, but it's still like a ninth house choice. And so that's like the new direction you're going in. And by the way, I'm not encouraging anybody to do that. I'm just saying that you might do it. But in any case, let me see what else is going on. So it's weird. It's one of these months where there are a couple of retrogrades, but there's not like a whole lot of planetary activity of all these different planets transiting. So let me talk about the two retrogrades. They're both in Capricorn, so they're both in your 6th house of health. Saturn is retrograding on the 17th, right after that new moon. And Saturn entered your 6th house, Leo, on December 20th. I think it was December 20th, maybe the 19th. But anyway, around that late December period. And so when Saturn is in your 6th house, the 6th house is the house of health. It's also the house of your work-a-day world. So your schedule on a daily basis, which is particularly pertinent if you're working from home and you have to engage in time management skills, but also just the work itself. I mean, your workplace, your coworkers, and things like that. So with Saturn in this house, there may be, Saturn represents this kind of disciplinarian that we have to face once every 30 years in a particular house. So for the next 2.5 years, you have Saturn in this 6th house. For some people, it may be the time that they have to get really serious about their health. Maybe you've allowed certain excesses to occur. Saturn does not like excess. And it's interesting because you had Sagittarius, well, forget about that because that's coming later. I'm not going to talk about that. But anyway, but the thing is, it's like this sense of, with Leo, there's always this love of going to parties and having maybe, these expensive dinners and things like that. And you may like to live large. And so that can indicate that you have to become more Spartan. You have to have a diet that is more simple, and perhaps you have to even examine certain habits of yours and really put yourself into ship shape, even on maybe with exercise, if you have been lax about that as well. And Saturn going retrograde can make it a little bit more difficult for you to do this. You may feel you don't have the same discipline that you've had recently and maybe the last few months. Maybe you did make some New Year's resolutions for your health, Leo, and now you feel like it's slipping. But understand that all retrogrades are meant to put things into review. Did you get a certain routine down, and does it really work for you? How has it been so far? And basically, you will be able, when Saturn goes direct, and it's in several months, I don't know exactly when, but you'll be able to have thought it out and seen what may work better for you if that's the case. Always just with a lot of reflection going on as to these areas of life, because this may be in terms of your work that you're doing right now. And I do differentiate. The 6th house is a house of service. So it's not about you getting a pat on the back. It's about the actual physical work, or well, when I say physical, I mean the actual literal work. The 10th house is kind of like the glory that you receive, the adulation or the accolades. But the 6th house is the actual nitty-gritty work. And that can be, during this several month period when Saturn is retrograde, it may be that you feel this sense of, I don't know, things feeling harder, it being harder to do your job. Maybe you feel like it's a burden on you. Obviously this is going to depend on the individual. And I think that this would be specifically the case for somebody, or particularly the case, if you're somebody who is already not happy with the kind of work that you're doing. By the way, Saturn goes direct on September 6th. I think that's important to note so that you know what time frame you're dealing with. But that's kind of a long time. I mean, that's almost a 6-month period. But in this 6-month period, things will slow down, and they're slowing down so that you can reassess them. This is about the kind of application, how you're applying yourself to your work, and whether your methods are sound, whether you are on the right track, and all of that good stuff. Because the 6th house is a practical house, it's an earth house, this is going to be about tangible results, because Saturn is in Capricorn too. So it's all about the earth. It's all about, it's not about theoretical situations. It's about real deal, things that you can prove, hold in your hand, and so forth. So I think that it's actually going to help you progress with your work. If you're somebody who has been frittering away your time, maybe you work from home and you have been kind of not as productive as you would like to be, this is a good time to really review what your goals are and what your daily schedule is and how you can implement something much more streamlined. And even kind of practice it and see what works best for you. You might want to try out different kinds of ways of approaching your workday. Now, with the Pluto retrograde that's happening on April 22nd, this is all about the mirror, okay? The mirror, shoved right in your face, Leo, about the work that you do, the service that you render. And I think for Leo, it's all about your ego. I'm gonna go there. So when you do something, let's say you're a beautician, a hairdresser. I just picked that. That was the first thing I thought. Maybe because Leo is really about their hair. But let's say you're a hairdresser. And I picked a kind of a rather ordinary profession that, I don't know, it just came to me. But you may feel like you are an artiste, that you're somebody who is like really skilled at what you do, and you like to, give these amazing new hairstyles. Maybe you even suggest hairstyles for people based upon what you think they would look good in. And if somebody turns you down and says, "No, I don't think a mohawk really, is going to make me look that great," you may get offended and think, "How dare they not listen to me?" And that's really the ego taking over. So I'm talking about Pluto retrograde may force you to see if you're really serving people selflessly, or whether you are behaving like a diva, being very, do you treat your coworkers respectfully, or do you see them as your competition? Or if you are an employer, if you're in charge, are you somebody who is very complimentary to your employees, or do you kind of try to keep them in line by being very stingy with the praise? It's all about how we serve others. Ultimately, that's what it's all about. And that's what our lives are about, is how it's all about helping other people in our own way, with our own creative self-expression. Even if you work in a bank, you have your own aura, you have your own personality, and you can still give people a little bit of a dose of your vibrations of who you are if you're living an authentic life. And so Pluto is going to really change your idea of service, and has already for the last 10 years. Now, this can also relate to your health, because Pluto is about purification. And so for some of you, you may already be on a very strict diet, and Saturn may have sealed the deal on that one. And you're questioning some of these ways that that you've been trying to purify yourself, and maybe it's going to come back where you're thinking about whether or not you can reintroduce certain foods into your life, or behavior patterns that you have let go of, that you have purged, and you will see if you react to it or not, because Saturn will keep you in check, Saturn is going to make sure that you stay on track. Pluto is more about just totally healing and transformation, but Saturn is about discipline. And so actually you could say they work very well together in that regard. On the 24th, Venus goes into Gemini. So for most of the month, Venus is in Taurus, your 10th house. The sun actually enters that 10th house on the 19th, and Venus is there until the 24th. And then, and while the sun and Venus are both in that 10th house, it's a wonderful time for any kind of gain professionally. And even when the sun leaves that 10th house, Venus will still be there. It can indicate an increase in income from the career. It can indicate that you are being viewed by your superiors and also the public in a very favorable manner. You may get assistance from others. People may want to help you. It may increase your popularity. So all in all, it's a very good influence for your professional life. And then Venus goes into the 11th house on the 24th, the luckiest house, the house of hopes and wishes. So this can be wonderful for attracting, Venus is an attractor, funds to make your dreams come true. I don't know how else to say it. Maybe something comes out of the blue that is basically what you've been wanting for perhaps even years. But also, this is the house of friendship. So you could meet somebody romantically through your circle of friends, or through a group that you belong to that, caters to your interest. So that's also possible. It's a very good time when planets go into the 11th house. And then on the 29th, we have a full moon in Scorpio, 9 degrees of Scorpio. This is your 4th house of home and family, Leo. So some ending there, or some discovery about that, about your mother. You may learn something about her. An ending could be that you sell your house, or a discovery could be a revelation you've had about your childhood. This may be some kind of like a deep insight about, maybe you're putting two and two together about what your life has been about. The 10th house, the opposite house of this 4th house, is, related to the father. The 4th is the mother, the 10th is the father. So you have both of these polarities. At the time of the full moon, the sun is going to be in the exact same degree in the opposite sign, which is Taurus. The sun will be in Taurus in that 10th house on that same day at the same degree of of Taurus as the full moon is in Scorpio. So you may understand something about you better, and maybe even why you are the way that you are, why you chose the profession that you chose because of your childhood, because of your background. So, it can be too with the full moon in the fourth house that perhaps there is going to be some kind of, it's interesting. I don't know if pregnancy would be connected to this. Children, your current family, it could be, and the full moon is a very fertile time. Usually the fifth house that you rule, Leo, in the universal chart is connected to conceiving children and children in general. But I think, because of the mother connection to the fourth house, maybe you find out that you're pregnant and that you're going to be, having a delivery. Because, by the way, Jupiter is in this house, is transiting this house until November. Now Jupiter is retrograde. So maybe if you're a woman, you are going to get pregnant. Maybe you have adopted during this past, when did Jupiter go into Scorpio? Whenever it did, the past several months, maybe you adopted and now you're pregnant. Because Jupiter retrograde brings opportunities back to you that reconnects you with those possibilities. So Jupiter is about expansion, and the fourth house is home and family, expanding your family. So that's maybe a possibility for some. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed this, Leo, and if you'd like a private reading, please click on the link below. Otherwise, have a wonderful April. Take care. Bye.